Hey Chaotic Crew, Brian here, and today we're going to do a Precon review and upgrade for the first Duskmourn Precon that's been spoiled, the Jump Scare, Simic, Manifest, Face Down Creature, whatever you want to call it, Precon. Super fun, it looks like. Probably going to be my favorite of the set, so I'm really excited to get into this. Now, we are going to be giving away a Precon of your choosing, but you're going to have to make a comment on each of our Precon upgrade videos for this set, and we'll choose a random winner 2 weeks after the final video goes live. So make sure to like and subscribe to check out future videos, but let's jump into this deck. So this, like I said, is a green-blue, sort of a landfall matters theme. Let's dive into what Duskmourn does. So she's the commander, Duskmourn, Mystery Unraveler. 4 mana for a 3/3 human wizard with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, manifest dread if it's the first time this ability has resolved this turn. Otherwise, you may turn a permanent you control face up. So if you're unfamiliar with the set mechanics, manifest dread means you look at the top 2 cards of your library. You will put one of them on the battlefield as a face down 2/2 creature, and one of them in the graveyard. And the one you put as a creature, you can flip it face up at any time for its mana cost if it is a creature card. If it's not a creature card, you can only flip it face up with Duskmourn's second ability about turning permanents you control face up, or there are some other cards that can do that too. So pretty much the game plan with the Precon, it goes in a bit of a different directions. You want lands, you want to have big creatures that you can cheat in and flip face up. And something I think this deck doesn't, do as well is be able to get some of the cards back out of your graveyard that you're putting in the graveyard. Because with each landfall trigger that you're manifesting dread, you're putting a card in your graveyard. I think that's something that people maybe, or that I feel like was a little bit overlooked. But right now, though, let's take a look at these creatures. Overgrown Zealot from the main set of Duskmourn. 2 mana for a 0/4 mana dork. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Tap to add 2 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to turn permanents face up. So can definitely be useful there to help if you have a bunch of face down creatures, can help flip some of those over. And because, they are face down, you can flip them face up at instant speed, so that can be helpful too. Sakura Tribe Elder, great ramp piece. Shigeki, sort of a semi-ramp piece, a way to get multiple lands in the battlefield at one turn. Pretty much that's how we're going to be triggering our commander to cheat those big creatures in, is because we want to make sure we're getting more than one land on our battlefield a turn, so we can manifest dread and then immediately flip something over. Or if we have a bunch of different face down creatures, we want to be able to get 2 or 3 lands so that the second or third will flip over 2 creatures, right? Augur of Autumn helps us get lands and creatures from the top of our library, which is nice. The Covenant ability doesn't work super well with Duskmourn's, getting us the 2/2s, but I don't think that's bad either. Just a good card altogether. Deathmist Raptor is really good. It's a card you can put in the graveyard, right? Especially if you have to choose between one or the other. You can go into the graveyard because it brings itself back, which is pretty nice. Glitch Interpreter is a new card. When it enters, if you control no face-down permanents, you return it to its owner's head, and you manifest dread. And then whenever one or more colorless creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So this is pretty good too if we're planning on getting a lot of face-down creatures, right? Can sort of help draw us more cards. Kefnith the Mindful, definitely a sneaky card to have as a face-down 2/2 and then swing it in. And then you can pay 3 mana to instant speed flip it over before blockers are declared. 5/5 flyer coming at you on turn 3 is pretty great if you can manage that. Scoot Swarm, any landfall deck, you might want Scoot Swarm in there. It's a pretty solid card. Scab Ruinator, another card you might not have seen, 5/6 flyer, and as an additional cost to cast, you have to exile 3 creatures from your graveyard. So not ideal there, but we're actually not going to be casting it. We're going to be manifesting it from our library, and then we can turn it face up for 3 mana, which is fairly cheap. Or even if we're putting it in the graveyard, we can pay 3 mana, exile 3 other creatures from our graveyard, and bit on the battlefield that way. So some reusability here. I actually really like Scab Ruinator for sure. Trigon Predator, another flyer, 2/3 for 3. When it deals combat damage to a player, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls. So definitely solid here to get in and get rid of those pesky artifacts and enchantments. Yavimaya Elder, a way to get lands into your hand. A Ricksmith Thieves is really neat. A 12/12, but it has a caveat like of coming into play with a bunch of slumber counters on it, and you can't really attack with it right away. So getting this manifested first is very helpful there. Sentinel Hierophants gives creatures you control tap to add a mana. This is really helpful if we have a bunch of face down creatures and they're pretty expensive, so it's costly to flip them back over, but that's nice there. Giggling Skitter Spike, 4 mana for a 1/1. This is one of the new cards. Indestructible. Whenever it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, deals damage equal to its power to each opponent, and then you can monstrosity it to make it a 6/6. I am not the biggest fan of this card. Even in this deck, it doesn't really fit for me, but even outside of it, it's not even the best unless you're specifically building around that. So we'll probably take that one out. Karu Spell Snatcher pretty much is a card that you can flip face up for 6 mana, right? And you can cast it as a morph creature as well. When it's turned face up, you counter a spell. And then if you counter the spell that way, instead of, putting it into its owner's graveyard, you exile it, and then you may cast it without paying its mana cost as long as it remains exiled, which is pretty nice. So this could be really good to keep up for some of your opponent's haymakers. Maybe they'll cast a Cyclonic Rift or something, or it's a Fairy's Protection, and you want to stop that and maybe cast your own one later down the line. Definitely could be good there. This deck could use more counters for sure, so we'll keep this one in. Kian, Corrupted Memory, is a cool card, but doesn't really fit in with the deck. As long as her power is even, you may cast non-creature spells as though they had flash. As long as her power is odd, you may cast creature spells as though they had flash. Whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Kian. So, a very cool card. I think you can do lots of fun stuff with her, but it doesn't really fit with what the deck is doing. Rashmi Eternity's Crafter, also a great card historically, right? 2/3 for 4. When you cast your first spell, each turn reveal the top card. If it's a non-land with mana value less than the card you cast, then you get to cast it for free. If it's not, you just put it in your hand. I don't think this really fits in with the deck either, right? It's not getting us extra lands. It's not... we're not casting a ton of spells either, right? So the spells we are casting, we want to be manifesting Dread or getting those lands so that Zamon can trigger. So I don't think Rashmi is the best fit either. But one card that really is, and a fantastic reprint, is Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, a star for 5, power toughness equal to the number of lands you control, so already kind of fitting that land theme. And then non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types, so that includes itself. So when it enters, it's going to trigger landfall, and then when that Manifest Dread token enters, that's going to, because it's not a token, right, it's an actual creature, that's going to trigger Zamon's landfall as well. That's the only one. You can flip that face up, or you can flip another creature you have face up. Definitely solid there. Body of Knowledge, 5 mana for a star. Power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no max hand size, and whenever it is dealt damage, you draw that many cards. This could be a neat little combat trick, right? But I don't think it's really that worth it. Tadiova, Benthic Druid, any landfall deck in Simic colors needs this card. Every time it lands entering, you're drawing a card and gaining a life, so definitely great there. Whisperwood Elemental is neat in these manifest decks, right? Beginning of your end step, you manifest the top card of your library. Sacrifice it until end of turn, face up non-token creatures you control, gain when this creature dies, manifest the top card of your library. So this is sort of semi-board wipe protection, but I don't want to have too many face down creatures in the battlefield here, because we really want our commander to be triggering that and to be flipping them face up. So getting extra face down creatures can be helpful, but this is one I'm iffy on too. Eudora Gravegardener is really neat. Whenever another non-token creature we control dies, you may return to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. It's a forest land. So that would trigger Zamon, right, which is pretty neat. And then you could, manifest Dread, or if it's a second or third land, you can go ahead and flip it back face up. definitely some combo shenanigans you can do with this one. Very good there. AZ, Tyrant of Gyre Strait, one of the best reprints for this too. Playing additional land on each of your turns is a great ability for a deck that wants to be playing multiple lands per turn. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield in your control, you may draw a card, which is great that it's a May, right? Because this deck could probably draw way too many cards. But yeah, just a really solid creature there as well. Curator Beastie, a new card, 6/6, reach for 6 mana. Colorless creatures you control enter with 2 additional 1/1 counters on them, which is perfect because when we're manifesting those creatures, they'll be 4/4s, but then when we flip them back face over, they'll keep those counters, which is really neat there. And then when this creature enters or attacks, you manifest Dread. So very good there. Creator Tanuki, a way to ramp out and get a second land on the battlefield, or if you manifest Dread, it's a 6/5 trampler, so not bad either. Hydra Omnivore, 8/8. When it deals damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. That can be pretty neat, but there's no real evasion there, so you kind of need to build around this, I think, to make it worth it in a deck. But having the surprise of the 2/2s, maybe as deterrent as blockers, could be good there. Multani is a big creature. It gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land in your graveyard. So even when we're manifesting, the lands to the graveyard, it's going to be really good too. And you can return 2 lands you control to the hand to return it from your graveyard to hand. So you can also put this in the graveyard, return 2 lands to your hand, play more lands to get more landfall triggers. So Multani's definitely solid and a big beater in the deck as well. Temur War Shaman, 6 mana for a 4/5. When it enters, manifest a top card of your library, and then when a permanent you control is turned face up, if it's a creature, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. So this is also really good to get some removal on the board. Mass removal as well can really turn the tides, right? If you can get this set up. Thunderfoot Baloth is just a 5/5 trampler. It gives all your creatures +2/+2 and trample if your commander is on the battlefield, so very good there. Beanstalk Giant, half ramp and also half big creature, so again, really good best of both worlds for the Manifest Dread. Shriekwood Devourer, a new card, 7 mana for a 7/5 trampler. When you attack with one or more creatures, untap up to X lands, where X is the greatest power among those creatures. So if this is attacking, you're untapping 7 lands. Now, when you play this, it doesn't have haste, right? So you could be attacking with something else and untapping another amount of land, so that's pretty neat there. It's essentially making itself almost free. And then World Spineworm, another fun reprint, 15/15 for trample. When it dies, put 3 5/5 worm creature tokens with trample on the battlefield, and when it's put into the graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library, so you can continually manifest Dread this card. It's pretty nice there. Biomass Mutation is a spell and instant. Creatures you control have base power and toughness XX until end of turn. That could be a big blowout if you have a bunch of unblocked creatures, or if you need big blockers quickly. Counterspell, pretty self-explanatory. Growth Spiral, giving you that extra land per turn, which is what we need. Rampant Growths, another ramp spell. Reality Shift is good removal. Cackling Counterpart can clone one of your own creatures, which if we have one of our big beaters can be really nice. Beast Within, also great removal. Cultivate, getting that second land onto the battlefield per turn and just ramping us out is great in general. Disorienting Choice, a new card. For each opponent, choose up to 1 target artifact or enchantment that player controls. For each permanent chosen this way, its controller may exile it. Then if there are 1 or more of the chosen permanents are still in the battlefield, you search your library for up to that many land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So I think for the most part, your opponents aren't going to want you to exile their thing, so they'll give you the lands. And if you have Zamon on the battlefield, this could be really great, but I think this is feigned as remove 3 artifacts or enchantments, when typically it's going to be, you're going to get 2 lands or 3 lands from this and maybe get rid of 1 artifact that an opponent doesn't really care about. So there is that. I don't think this is the best card in the world, but for a deck that cares about having lands, I think it can be good too. And it's any land, so you can get the best lands from your deck. So that does help make the choice a bit more difficult. Eureka Moment, draw 2 cards. You may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield, just like Growth Spiral, but you're drawing an extra card. Explosive Vegetation just triggers your commander already to get 2 lands on the battlefield. There's some better effects than this in the game, but we're probably not going to take this one out because we want as much as we can get. Aetheric Gale is good to get rid of the most problematic permanents on the battlefield. It's a shame it's not an instant, but at sorcery speed and because we're a land stack, this is going to be great anyways. Oversimplify is a fantastic board wipe. Overwhelming Stampede can win the game. Zamone's Hypothesis is a new card. Instant, you may put a 1/1 counter on a creature, then choose odd or even. Return each creature with power of the chosen quality to its owner's hand. This is a neat card, especially for a manifest deck with a bunch of 2/2s, but at the same time, it's not really as one-sided as it might come off. My opponents might have even power creatures or odd power creatures, and especially the problematic cards. Sure, you can choose to get rid of the most problematic things, but maybe you're also hurting yourself in the process. I just think there's some better options than this. But it is a cool card and probably can find a home in some niche decks. And then Dig Through Time, really great card to big mana, but we're delving cards that we're getting out of our graveyard and drawing to, so pretty nice there. Azuri's Predation, also a semi-board wipe. You're making 4/4s for each creature your opponents control and they fight, so that's definitely good there too. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Sim Signet are really great. Scroll of Fate, you can manifest a card from your hand, so if you draw one of the World Spine Worm or something, this can help put a card face down. And it's not just creature, you can put any card as well. That's something I want to point out too. Zamone can put any permanent or any card face down as a 2/2, and then she can flip the permanent face up. If it's a spell like an instant or sorcery, it'll fizzle and just go to the grave, but you can get free enchantments, free artifacts, free battles, whatever you want with Zamone, you can flip it up for free. So that's a very appealing aspect, and Scroll of Fate does the same thing. It's manifesting any card from your hand, right? And so Zamone can bring it back. Growing Dread is a new card from the main set. Flash, when it enters, you manifest Dread, and when you turn a permanent face up, put a 1/1 counter on it. So there's a little bit of a 1/1 counter theme in the deck as well, which is good. Getting your creatures very big is a way to close out the game, that's for sure. Trail of Mystery, a 2-mana enchantment. Whenever a face-down creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So this is a good way to get those lands to our hands, right? And can help not miss our land drops, essentially. Retreat to Coral Helm, great in a landfall deck. We can scry one, I think is the mode we want to go to here. Whenever our land enters, we'll scry one. We can have this resolve first before Zamone manifest Dread, and if the card if on top of our library we want to manifest, then great, and if we don't, we can just put it on the bottom and kind of save it from going to the graveyard, which is nice. Wilderness Reclamation untaps all our lands at beginning of our end step, which is really nice because, like I said, you can flip over the creatures at instant speed, so you spend all this mana for your turn, and then you have 3 face down creatures, right? And no really way to flip them face up quite yet. But Wilderness Reclamation will untap all your lands, and maybe you could flip 1 or 2 of them, so that's kind of nice there. Primordial Mist, a 5-mana enchantment. Beginning of your end step, you may manifest a dog card in your library, and then exile a face down permanent you control face up, and then you may play that card this turn. So if you somehow manifest a spell, this is actually one of the few ways you can, exile it and then cast it as a spell. So it's kind of cool there too. They Came from the Pipes, a new card, 5-mana enchantment. When it enters, you manifest Dread twice, and then when a face-down creature you control enters, you draw a card. So you're essentially going to be drawing 2 cards when this enters, and you're also going to be manifesting Dread twice, and that's a pretty good card to keep on the battlefield. Experimental Lab and Staff Room is a new room mechanic, and it's really tiny and sideways here, so I'll try and explain it to you. Pretty much when you cast this, and I'm pretty sure when you flip it over as well, you get to unlock a room, and for the mana of the other side, right, you can choose to unlock it at a sorcery speed. So the left side of the room is when you unlock this door, manifest Dread, then put 2 +1/+1 counters and a trample counter on that creature. So essentially you're making a 2/2 that becomes a 4/4 trample, and then the other side is Staff Room for 2 and a green. Whenever a creature you control deals damage to a player, turn that creature face up or put a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is just a nice way to flip your creatures as well. Sandworm Convergence, also a great spell to cheat in with your commander. Makes creatures with flying not be able to attack you or planeswalkers you control, which is great. And then we're making 5/5 worms at our end step, so not worth 8 mana, so I wouldn't pay it. But if you can get it flipped over with your commander, then you're doing great. And then this deck has 38 lands, which for a land deck I don't think is bad at all. I typically like to go lower, but I guess the main thing here is they don't have too many amazing lands. They have Reliquary Tower, they have Flooded Grove, They have Hinterland Harbor, which is nice, but none of the lands really stand out as very amazing. But that's okay. We don't need them to be. They just need to be lands. So now that we've gone over what the deck does, what it wants to do, right, and some things that it struggles with, let's go over the cards I'm going to take out. I'll be taking out 15 for each of these decks, and I'm going to add 15. So let's just dive right into that. For the creatures, we're taking out Body of Knowledge. Like we said, it doesn't really do enough. And Sentinel Hierophant's also not amazing. We don't need the creature imp. We're already ramping a lot with lands, so we don't need to be having a creature's tap for mana either. Giggling Skitterspike just doesn't really fit the deck. I took out Glitch Interpreter, even though it is Manifesting Dread and makes our colorless creatures draw us cards when they deal damage. It just didn't do enough for me. We needed more things that gave us multiple lands a turn. We needed more bigger threats we wanted to cheat in. We needed more, we didn't need no more ways to manifest dread, right? And we could replace this with a better card draw, because getting a 2/2 to get unblocked in this deck is not great. It's not easy, right? So not the best card. I took it out for that. Hydra Omnivore, like I said, it's really hard without building around it to really get the most out of getting that extra damage out. Kian, already kind of went over this. It doesn't really fit the deck either. Rashmi as well. We're not casting too many spells. Sure, we're getting to draw a card, essentially, a turn off of Rashmi, but a lot of our mana is going to be spent into flipping creatures or, ramping out, and Rashmi is really best used when you get to play a big spell and get another slightly less big spell. Shigeki, Jukai Visionary. I was on the fence about taking Shigeki out because he technically does allow us to put multiple lands onto the battlefield, but he does mill us a lot, unfortunately, and we don't need to be putting so many cards into our graveyard. Even though he can bring them back to our hand, it just didn't make sense, and it was kind of slow. It was like 4 mana for 1 land every time we wanted to do it, and it was just slow. Whisperwood Elemental, I think, is not bad for the deck, and you could probably argue taking out other cards instead of Whisperwood Elemental. I just feel like it's definitely more of a win more card, and it helps. It does do some semi-board wipe protection, but it's not enough to really make it valuable to me, in my opinion. And then Yavimaya Elder, as far as the creatures, sure, you can sacrifice to get 2 lands to your hand, but that's nothing. You don't really it doesn't really do much there. We'd rather get those lands onto the battlefield, not to our hand. Azura's Predation's neat. 8 mana, we can definitely get there with the lands in this deck, but at this point in the game when we're playing Azura's Predation, this isn't really a token deck. So we can't synergize with the card as well, and there's going to be a lot of creatures that are bigger than 4/4s, so it's not really going to do as much as we might want it to do. These creatures aren't going to have haste. They're not going to draw us cards when they enter. They're just 4/4s, right? So it's not as useful as it might think. Biomass Mutation could be good as well, but I'd rather just have another Overwhelming Stampede effect or something else. This card you're dumping a ton of mana into, and you could get no reward. Your creatures could get chump blocked. This is really best used as a combat trick, but even then you're paying in so much mana to make it worth it that it's too much for me. Cackling Counterpart is good, but we also have a lot of legendary creatures that are in, and also some that we've added that this could be a dead draw sometimes. It is nice that it has flashback, so we could manifest it to the graveyard, but most of the time we're not going to be copying stuff unless we have one of the few creatures that we want to copy. There's 4 or 5, and so having 1 card in just for 4 or 5 creatures doesn't make sense to me. And then we talked about Zimon's Hypothesis. It's not as one-sided as it reads off, so not the best there. And then we did take out Temple of the False God. I don't hate it in this deck, but it's not consistent early enough, right? We need to be able to get our commander out on turn 3 or turn 4, and if this is in our opening hand, it's just not going to happen, so that's rough there. But we did add in a couple more lands to make it 39, and we'll get to that actually right now. Let's go to the cards I added in, starting with creatures. Anok Survivalist, just another way to get rid of artifacts, enchantments. This deck only came with 1 card, the Trigon Predator, that was guaranteed to get rid of artifacts and enchantments. The new card, the 4 mana one that let your opponents choose whether or not we want them to exile them, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense there. Ancient Green Warden, fantastic card. We can play lands from our graveyard, and if a land entering causes a triggered ability of an impermanent we control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. This is perfect for our commander because its ability happens based off of how many times it's resolved this turn. So this will just make it to the first land. We'll get a creature, and then we can automatically flip it, right? And then the next land will just make it so that we can flip 2 creatures, possibly. So we don't need to be spending too much time getting multiple lands on the battlefield, which can definitely be harder come the late game to get multiple lands on the battlefield at a time. But this also helps by being able to play some of the lands that sacrifice themselves from our graveyard. Den Protector, great card to have. We need more cards that can return cards from our graveyard to our hand, especially ones that are really important, so Den Protector is great at that. Fairly cheap too. Experiment 12 is awesome, and it's a 4/4 trampler. Whenever it or another creature you control is turned face up, put +1/+1 counters on it equal to its power. So essentially doubling each creature's power as we flip them face up, and that's definitely going to be deadly, especially with, say we have World Spine Worm and we flip a face up, it's going to be a 30/30, so definitely good there. I added the Lumra, Bellow of the Woods as well to here. Vigilance, Reach, Star equal to the number of lands we control, which is nice, and then when it enters, you mill 4 cards and return all lands from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So could be a nice way to mass flip over our board if we have a bunch of 2/2s, right? But also he's ramping us and just getting a bunch of lands out, which is really nice. Nantuko Vigilante, similar with Inex Survivalist, we just needed another way to get rid of artifacts and enchantments. This is a great way to do that. Stratus Dancer is a counter spell for instants or sorceries that it gets flipped over, so definitely good there. And then Thousand Winds, I put that in because we needed another board wipe, and this is sort of the best one with like the morph or like the cloak, disguise, whatever mechanic. This one, you return all tapped creatures to their owner's hand, which can definitely be really good, especially if someone is swinging at you, right, and tapping other creatures to do that. You can flip this face up, or you can flip it face up. The turn it comes out with Duskmourn and just put a bunch of stuff out to their opponent's hands. Balagad Recovery is really great. It's a land, but it also can be a spell, and it returns a card from your graveyard to your hand, so that's great to have. Under the Skin's a new card from the main set. You just pay 3 mana to manifest Dread, and then you can also return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So really good there to help get some of our creatures that died from a board wipe or whatnot back to our hand from the graveyard. Sink into Stupor is an instant that also is one of those MDFC lands, right, from Modern Horizons. Return target spell or non-land permanent to an opponent controls to its owner's hand, so it's nice little removal there, but also works as a land for the deck, which is why we're at 39 lands now. And then enchantments, Druid class is really good. We're going to be gaining life when we have lands in her, which will help pad our life total a bit. I think it's always important to have a couple life gain cards in your deck nowadays. But the level 2 is probably the main reason we're putting this in, and it's so we can play extra lands on each of our turns. And then, of course, the 3rd level makes a land a creature with power equal to the number of lands we control. So if we need that, we can use it, but we're pretty much just playing this so we can play additional lands on our turns. One with the Multiverse is a great enchantment you can cheat in. As you'll see to the side, we'll get to in a second, it's a more fair version of some other cards over there, but it lets you look at the top card of your library at any time. You can play lands and cast spells from the top of your library, and once during each of your turns, you may cast a spell from your hand or on the top of your library without paying its mana cost. And with some of these big mana creatures we have in the deck, that could definitely be helpful. Secret Plans, surprised it didn't come in the Precon to begin with. Face down creatures get +0/+1, and whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, you draw a card. So definitely really good there. And then last card we added in from the main set, Threats Around Every Corner. It's an enchantment. When it enters, you manifest Dread, and when a face down permanent you control enters, search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So with Duskmourn's ability, right, the first landfall, and say this is on the battlefield, we play a land. We manifest a creature onto the battlefield, and this will trigger. Then we search our library for a land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then we can immediately flip the face up with Duskmourn's ability. So really just works perfectly with Duskmourn and does some great stuff here. I've added a couple non-budget cards. Well, I mean, Omniscience isn't too bad, but it's more of an unfun card. You could add this in your play group. You'll be able to cast non-land cards from your hand without paying its mana cost, so it could be a quick way to win the game there, or to, you know, make it so that you're just way ahead of everybody. I like the Great Hinge a lot too, but it's almost $70, and I, you know, can't ask anyone to to pay that much. But if you have a copy laying around, or your play group is proxy friendly, I would definitely add the Great Hinge to the deck. Just drawing you cards and putting counters on those creatures as they enter is really good too. And being able to cheat this out with Duskmourn is also nice. But yeah, this deck is really solid. One of the things I think it can struggle with is it doesn't have enough removal or protection, right? We only have like 3 counters in the deck, and we do have more removal. We added more removal, but this deck is really trying to just beat face. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to be able to have answers to some of your opponent's big threats. So that's probably where it struggles the most. Board wipes also are really tough for this deck. So not having more counters or more protection is definitely difficult sometimes. The Manifest Dread mechanic makes it so that you pretty much have to be okay with putting some of your cards into the graveyard. And if you're not okay with some of that, like maybe you need to run more defensive cards, but then running more defensive cards mean you're running less big threats that you can just flip face up. So it's a bit of a give and take, and it's going to take some testing to really see, you know, how this deck is going to shape up, but I think it's an incredibly fun deck. Let me know what you would add to Duskmourn Mystery Unraveler. What would you take out? I want to hear it in the comments down below. We are going to be giving away a Duskmourn Precon, right, to someone who makes a comment on all of our videos for the series, and once we do 2 weeks after the final video goes up, the Precon upgrade for Duskmourn, then we will be revealing that live on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ChaoticCommanderMTG. So make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the upcoming Precon upgrades there. That's going to do it for me. I'll see you pretty soon. Whenever they release the next one, I'll get right to work on it, and catch you then. Bye.